Can you hand me a postcard? Not one. Oh, you got it.
It's a freshie. Gotcha, a freshie. You know what I'm going to do for
episode 67? Gotcha, a freshie.
This podcast is not going to be fresh. This is
When you said you know what I'm going to do, you know what I'm going to do, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get you a freshie. That's what I thought. That's what I thought you were going to say.
No, he burped, and I said, you know what I'm going to do is never buy giant 1-liter club sodas for all of us to drink before this. I like club soda because I like the mouthfeel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
I like the mouthfeel, yeah. It's something I don't experience.
67. I like the mouthfeel.
Or I'm going to get you a freshie.
I'm going to get you a freshie.
Because I don't really like soda, but I do like the bubbly mouthfeel.
Do you?
I love it.
You love the what?
Oh, what do you love?
The bubbly mouthfeel.
Oh, yeah, huh.
Yeah, it's like a good,
It's like a good mouthfeel.
I learned the word mouthfeel from Amelia. We were in this.
The word mouthfeel? Is that a word? Is that a
yes,
German,
no, it is. It's
Mouth
a term.
and feel und klunka.
I just listen to mouthfeel.
That sounds like mouse.
No, it's mouthfeel. Mousefeel? No.
No,
Mouthfeel.
You know the freshie.
Mic test complete. Oh, it's a mouthfeel. It's a mouthfeel. Anyway, thank you to our German listeners.
Games, video 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 games.
It's August 1st, 2012, and this episode was downloaded without your permission through the Uplay browser plugin.
This is Idle Thumb 67, and I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I'm Sean Vanneman.
Hey, Sean.
Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be back.
Thanks.
From last week?
I mean, I was gone.
You were in the great state of Wyoming
in a couple weeks.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. But while I was gone, you guys went to California Extreme, and
I'm
jealous.
Me
Very
too. I'm
jealous.
jealous of us because it was awesome.
Very jealous.
Yeah, California Extreme is an expo held in sort of the South Bay that's just all arcade games, pinball games, and some other really
Horrible animatronics.
It's a show where I think it's just if you're an owner of an arcade cabinet of some kind, you can show up as an exhibitor, by which that means you wheel your arcade cabinet up and just set up a gigantic video arcade that people can play. So
And some of them are there to be sold, but most of them aren't. Most of them are just there because the dealer just, or not dealer, but the owner of the thing just comes and helps out, I guess. I don't really know how that works, but it's cool.
Oh man, fun best fact about California Extreme. I think this was the case last year as well, but it's double booked in the convention center with it's double booked in the convention center with a Jehovah's Witnesses convention.
Oh my gosh!
So like,
and also right across the street from it, basically, is a
Great America
theme park.
So like the convention center is split in half of just all these really nice, polite-looking families in suits, and then just dorks. But like the thing is,
sweaty.
the kids in the Jehovah's Witness family.
Oh my
It's just like
this is the Alamo for them.
yeah. I think JP or our friend Cable compared it to like a joke from an old episode of The Simpsons where the kids show up and like to your left, free world's largest arcade. To the right, roller coaster park. To the middle, Jehovah's Witness convention with your parents. Like, oh man, you're wearing that uncomfortable like suit that your mom and dad made you wear, and then you just look like right through the door of that hallway and see every arcade game that's ever made.
And kids are just
for
in
free.
slow motion, losing their minds.
Yep. So look out the front door. You see a wheel of a like, or you see the like hill.
Yeah,
hill.
just like people going woo, like spinning on like a legs-free roller coaster. Like, yeah, and then you just go up the escalator to some room, and I don't really know what a Jehovah's Witness convention entails, but I'm sure it's not roller coasters or an infinite free arcade.
No.
Strip poker.
Yeah.
What?
I was just imagining the weird, like those poor suckers, and like meanwhile, cut to
Oh, they're actually going.
crazy energy.
They're actually, it's the one time a year where they just cut loose, so the kids can't wait. Like fucking suckers down there in the big arcade. I'm gonna see boobs.
Hilarious.
That is an incredible setup.
Like we walked into the convention center through the Jehovah's Witness side, and it was really confusing for a second. I'm just like, you are all well behaved. Most of you are not speaking English. You're all wearing suits. Oh, there's all of the weird, like faded stretch T-shirts and ponytails. That's where we meant to be going. Okay, got it.
Yep.
There's those sideburns.
So, did you guys just mostly play stuff that was nostalgic for you guys, or was there a discovery element?
The thing I'm sure I've talked about this on past years when we've gone to stuff like this on Our Thumbs, but for me, the interesting thing about this is there's almost no nostalgia involved because I didn't.
You weren't an arcade kid at all, right?
Yeah, I didn't play. You
were a Jehovah's Witness.
I was at the Jehovah's Witness.
Chris is a roller coaster aficionado.
But yeah, like I went to arcades occasionally. Like there were really like small examples of them. You know, like my local movie theater had like 8 arcade cabinets there, like, you know, stuff like that. Right. But I didn't ever like go to arcades as a regular thing. You know, like it wasn't something I associate with my childhood really. And like, because I didn't have a console, so I didn't play like any of the equivalent games really. So for me, these are always awesome because I go there and play games I've just never played before. Like Rampart. I'd never played Rampart. Yeah. And it was awesome. It was so cool. I'm sure most people listening to this know what this game is, but I didn't.
Rampart, please. Yeah, I didn't know what Rampart was either. Do you know Rampart, Sean?
No, other than Zach telling me that he bought a Rampart cabinet.
Our buddy Zach, who is one of the guys who makes Kingdom of Loathing.
And Video Games Hot Dog.
Bought like 4 arcade cabinets.
Yeah, he bought some huge number of them. He was just there to acquire arcade cabinets.
Ones.
Yeah.
Like 2 of them were ones that I played for the first time at the show and were like my favorite things I played, and it just so happened that those are the ones he bought. So there was Rampart, and then also we bought APB, which I'd never played, and that was amazing. That was incredible.
He said that to me last night, and I went like, they made an arcade cabinet of that MMO that failed?
Yeah.
No, APB, it's a way earlier game, which we should also talk about for a second.
Yeah, but tell me about Rampart.
Rampart is rad. God,
it's really impressive. It's and I apologize for the thousands of people who already know what this game is, but you start off just picking a territory. Depending on how many people are in the game, it'll split the top-down battlefield. It's a top-down view of like
castles and some rivers dividing the area into territories.
I was going to just even get to like what type of theme is it.
Yeah, sorry, I should have led with that.
I associate Rampart with the Rampart division of the LAPD that had the giant scandal in the 80s where they found like cocaine
this is like
in the walls of the bar they hung out.
Old-timey castles and cannons.
So you're top-down like on a medieval battlefield.
That changes everything for me.
Rivers separating little plots of land. So if there's 3 of you, it's divided into 3. And at the beginning, you place your first little like
each
castle.
Each player picks a castle
down. Yeah, each player places down a castle within their territory, and then you go to a phase where using the joystick, you basically assemble castle walls Tetris-like. So you get given these.
It just says like, okay, you have an L block, boop, dropped, wall placed. Oh, you have a 1x1 piece. You have a line, and then you have to wall in one enclosed area around your castle.
Mm-hmm. And so you have each of these sections.
There's a rotate button and a place button.
I'm shocked.
It's already. It's weird that it's an arcade game.
Yeah, it does not feel like an arcade game, but it's awesome. Except that the way that they made it is totally suitable to the arcade because each of these phases is only like 10 seconds long or however long they are. They're really short. So you're really doing it. It's hard.
This is like the out of thumb school of Pikmin, like really rapid takes on strategy games. Rampart is kind of at home in that, actually.
Totally right. That's a really good observation. And so then you place all your castles down, and then you go into the next phase. And like each of these phases has like a different top-down tile set applied to it. So they look very different, and like when you're placing the pieces, they're just white outlined pieces. But then when you go to the next phase, they're rendered as nice little stone little tiles.
Yes, the next phase is
what era are we talking here?
It's like
medieval.
It's castles.
No. What era did the game come out?
It seems like it's pre-16-bit consoles. Like the color palette seems like it's like 16 color.
So that was during that era of console of arcade games. It had sort of multi-phase, different sort of it's like Tron had like 4 games inside of it, and you jump between all.
Yeah, and like Major Havoc.
Major
Havoc's earlier, I think. But it is
earlier. But yeah,
it's like a mid-era 2D arcade game, like before fighting games and stuff took off,
I'm
but
with you.
probably
Yeah,
like
yeah.
after pole position and stuff.
I got you. Yeah.
So, all right. So you build your castle, and when you build your castle, you need to build an enclosed area. Like you need your wall. You need at least one section of wall. You
have to enclose it before time runs out.
Continuous wall.
To be exactly totally contiguous wall. And then you go to the next phase, and in that
it shades in any area that's filled in, so you know
Right,
like
so you
what
can
building
see-
area you have.
yeah. Next phase, you get however many cannons to place down, and each cannon takes up 4 little squares. So I think you start with 3 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
You place them down in one of your filled in areas, one of your areas surrounded by a contiguous wall. Then everyone does this simultaneously. You go into the next phase, and that's just like madly shoot all your cannon at your opponents.
Yeah,
and
your cannons all sort of have some amount of reload time and stuff, but yeah.
And you have a little cursor that you position just as you used the cursor to position the pieces. Now you use it to
It becomes a
as your
crosshair,
reticle, right? To shoot cannons, and then it goes to the next phase, and that's when everyone's castles are all busted up.
Yeah.
So then you go back into building phase, and you need to patch all your holes. And
with Tetris pieces,
right? Which can be terrible because you've got like
you're like, I just need that one by one,
Exactly.
and so you just build these weird wild walls flowing off in hopes that maybe you'll get the. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
It's good.
And so if you fail, at the end of that placement of any placement phase, I guess, if you have failed to create even a single enclosed area, enclosed by a contiguous wall, then you are out basically, and you have some number of continues where you start again, but you've got to start again from scratch, from nothing. You're still in the game.
The idea
but,
is to destroy somebody's shit so much that they can't rebuild it in time
exactly.
slotted.
So you eventually sort of figure out like how to pick away at their walls, so you start knocking out every other thing, or just leaving really annoying. Like you try to.
I get it.
Yeah, you try to make a hard to rebuild wall.
It's almost you're not trying to execute devastating damage, just strategic pain in the ass damage.
Yeah,
that's
you're trying to be annoying.
Although it can get to the point where if you're doing well enough, and you're getting to the point where you're pretty easily enclosing your areas, all you're really doing then is just making your castle bigger and bigger and bigger.
Which gives you more and more cannons.
Gives you more and more cannons. So you can get to the point where you can fill up almost your entire territory.
You were flying high for a while there.
Yeah,
you had all your castles enclosed. You had a ton of cannons, but then Doug and I somehow managed to knock you all the way back down to nothing.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Like it was a pretty good ebb and flow between what's going on. And the cabinet that we were playing was 3-player, and I don't know what like the max is of across different arcades, but like there being 3 players made it really cool because it wasn't just 2 people pointing their reticules at each other during the cannon phase. Like Chris started getting bigger and bigger. Then I was like, Doug, why aren't you shooting at Chris? Like I didn't even know I could attack him. So then like we both turned all of our cannons on Chris for a while. It's cool.
It was a blast. It was a really interesting game.
It's fun to watch as well, just because it is okay. You have 30 seconds to place walls, so then it just becomes frantic, and then it's you have 30 seconds to place cannons, and then you probably have what seems like a minute to shoot each other. So it's just like this turnover of the 3 different cycles. It's really cool.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That almost sounds like it just sounds like a board game, except the cannon firing phase would be how many die you get to roll or something.
Yeah.
How many dice? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really like what you said comparing it to Pikmin. Like there is something really cool about using taking genres that are traditionally associated with computers for obvious reasons and adapting them for a platform that is less precise in its control by just acknowledging, all right, part of this is just that it's going to be sloppy, so let's play to that by having it be this just frantic.
Well, and just the nature of an arcade game is you want that quick turnover, you want the competitiveness to be really cutthroat, and you want it to be really spectator friendly, I think. And this game I think does a good job of that. Which is cool.
Yeah, it's constantly changing. It's what it's actually happening on the screen.
Yeah, it's cool. But if someone showed you a screenshot of it and you didn't see the gameplay, you would just be like, this looks like an Amiga or like slightly pre-Amiga top-down castle simulator. But then when you actually see the game in action, it's this crazy, like true. People going, just assembling walls as fast as they can and then just deploying like 50 cannonballs at top speed. It's funny.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because one of the games I did play when I was a kid was an interplay game called Castles, and I loved it. I loved that game so much. And it was a top-down castle builder where you build your castle, and then you have territory that I hardly remember how it works, but there's some kind of like map of Europe or something that you zoom out to, and like you capture territories and you're attacked, and like the Pope is a faction and he's just a total badass. Like when the Pope hates you, you're just totally fucked because his knights come in. But if you took a screenshot of Rampart, there are parts of that game where if you took a screenshot of Rampart and you took a screenshot of Castles and you put them next to each other, you're like, oh yeah, these are pretty similar games. These are the same genre. No, not true. Like, Castles is very much a, long game session, sort of intricate thing. And then Rampart is just this crazy.
People going, oh fuck.
God.
Yeah, that game's really fun.
Yeah, it's cool.
That sounds great. How like a few minutes for the full thing?
The full like
a victor.
Each cycle seems like it takes a couple minutes, but then it was taking us probably 3 or 4 full rounds before someone would die and then come back in. So it was probably
and you can go through and you can
it seemed like it was
die and come back a few times.
Yeah, it seemed like it was probably 5-10 minutes before someone was dead. But we also I don't think we know how the continue system actually works when it's quarters based. It might have been set up to
just do 2 always.
Yeah, or because I know arcade games you can debug and give you can in the power on screen change the number of lives and stuff that people get. So it may be more ruthless when it's expecting you to put quarters in. Like
it probably expects you to put a quarter in each of those times.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good find.
It was
So
good.
you have to get a Rampart cabinet is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's super good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody bought out of our crew. Nobody bought anything down there, right?
From Idle Thumbs type people.
Like I've always felt like Doug was in the market for like a cocktail gallagher.
No, but now the Video Games Hot Dog podcast is the proud owner of that Rampart cabinet.
Man. All right, we're going on the road. Live show from Phoenix. We're just going to play Rampart the whole time.
Yeah.
Awesome. What else do you guys play?
Oh man, one other thing that they did have there, which was generally terrible, is there's a guy who I guess acquired arcade boards from a bunch of never released Atari games, which sounds kind of interesting, but is actually what you'd expect, like Marble Madness 2, Marble Man, where the marbles all have wacky faces on them.
Oh God, that sounds horrible.
It's so bad. It was really
It's different than what I imagined when you said Marble Man. It was like a Michelin man made of marble.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
No, it is just like there's just a smiley face whenever the marble sits still. He's happy and like.
Does he get like super extreme and angry when he's
No, it looked like Marble Madness, the original, has that really weird sort of freaky style where there are these sort of there's also living creatures, but they're all like just completely devoid of any face or anything that makes them seem real, and the marbles are just these circles. Like it is you're playing basically a Trapper Keeper cover. But Marble Madness 2, I guess they thought that what was holding Marble Madness 1 back was that there wasn't a wacky face on everything. Also, they thought the levels were too good in Marble Madness 1, apparently. So it was really obvious why that wasn't released.
The funny thing about that to me is that usually you associate that with the shitty knockoff from a competing
this
company.
is the hit sequel.
They ruined their own game. They didn't need
That's so funny because JP has this cartridge in his house for this for a game called Dot Gobbler. Have you guys ever seen this? It's fucking
a Pac-Man
weird.
knockoff?
It's a Pac-Man knockoff, and I'm going to show you the photo of it.
Oh my God!
It is a sort of
we'll put that up on the blog.
Like figure,
that is
but it's like a guy with realistic pudgy arms and legs, but his whole body is just a sphere, like Pac-Man. But instead of the big pie, like pizza slice shaped mouth, he's just got a mouth and like big cartoon eyes. And he's running like on the cover of Dot Gobbler, he's just booking it like this horrible pudgy freak is just booking it away
dots,
with these dots that he is. Okay, so the whole point of Pac-Man is that he's just a mouth, so he just consumes things.
Right.
Dot Gobbler is actually like grabbing the pills and stuffing them in his mouth as he runs, and he's looking behind him, like he's got cartoon eyes that are like
he's sassily sort of looking over his shoulder.
Except, you'd think it would be sassy, except that he's sweating his fucking balls off. So he just looks like he's terrified, and he's like, oh my God. And then behind him are 3 ghosts. But they don't look, again, they're not like stylized Pac-Man ghosts. They just look like 3 people in sheets. Like they just look like 3 people with the terrible Halloween costume. So you just imagine this fucking poor freak of nature just stuffing acid.
Dot Gobbler is just a story of a fat kid on Halloween.
Well, I imagine him That's funny, but I imagine him like just on the worst acid trip imaginable. Like he's, oh my god, just sweating as just like three dudes in sheets are behind him. Oh god!
I was picturing like the fat kid whose costume has been torn off, but he still can't stop eating as these kids are tormenting him and chasing him around his neighborhood.
So these are just like Tootsie Rolls.
Yeah, it's just Dog Gobbler. It's probably one of those two things.
Also, the ghosts behind him, they have frowns, but they don't look angry. They just look really bummed out. Everything about this is the most depressing. It's terrible.
My gosh.
So I was going to change this. Okay, we're still talking.
No, Dog Gobbler's here for a minute.
The company is Mr. Computer Products.
An Idle Thumb subsidiary.
God, thank God.
God, thank God.
It's just terrible. I look at it, it's so distressing to me.
He has that in his home?
Yeah, JP has this just displayed on his bookshelf. It's so weird.
That is incredible. That is a treasure.
Yeah.
Sadly, that was not a California Extreme.
No.
Oh no! Look at the full color version.
Oh god, it doesn't get any better.
I don't want to look at that anymore.
He's got these horrible
rosy
rosy cheeks and this like blush. He's wearing lipstick apparently. This is the saddest kid.
Is that Mrs. Doc
This is
Gobbler?
like no, this is just Doc Gobbler. This is the kid who like tried on his mom's makeup and like just
He went as
like,
Raggedy Ann for Halloween,
Yeah.
but his dress got ripped off, and he has just a fat, sad candy eater being chased by some older boys.
who originally dressed as ghosts. Like, just cool move on those guys' part.
That's the classic.
Well, that's because
I'm
Doc Gobbler
15.
said nice ghost costumes, and that was the end of his Halloween. He stood up to them once. It did not go well for Doc Gobbler.
His dad, who doesn't respect him, said, "You just got to stand up for yourself."
He sees his fat son in a Raggedy Ann costume with lipstick on. And is just like, oh God.
Cracks another old Milwaukee.
Yeah, this is actually the second season of Freaks and Geeks that we're describing right here. It's co-licensed from Doc Gobbler.
Co-created by Dot Gobbler.
Inspired by Dot Gobbler.
Dot
Gobbler.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's a good name.
Oh, that's a GTLD, actually. Amazon's bidding really extensively to get Dot Gobbler.
Books Dot Gobbler.
Yeah, Amazon Dot Gobbler.
Games Dot Gobbler.
Yeah, we have to stop talking about this now.
Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to bring up?
Oh, I was going to talk about a game that I played at California Extreme, the
do
expo
it.
that we're talking about.
Was it Dot Gobbler? Sorry, go. What was it?
No, it was another canceled Atari game, but it was actually one that I kind of enjoyed. You had something there?
I wasn't going to say the words Dot Gobbler.
Oh,
go on.
You were. Because you play the hell out of Klax at every California Extreme.
Yeah. I love Klax. But I only ever play it at like weird arcade shows in the South Bay. Like I don't own that game on any format.
Yeah.
Once every year or two I play it for like 3 hours straight.
That's probably why you love it so much.
It probably is. I don't
It's
get
probably
tired
like
of
a
it.
whole sort of
Where you're
Yeah.
like, it's time for Klax or whatever.
It is the 90s and it is time for Klax.
Yeah.
That is the weird opening crawl of that game. It is the 90s and there is time for Klax.
Oh,
There
that's right.
is time
There is
for
time.
Klax.
There is
Like it's
time
trying to
for Klax.
sell you. Oh, there's time for Klax.
Yeah.
Just chill. It's
the
90s. But this game that I was playing is called SparkZ with an X, SPARX, and I think that the reason this game didn't get shipped in my brain is because the theme is you're a mad scientist who's trying to create a monster. But what the actual mechanics are is a combination of a falling block game and pipe dream, which is actually rad. Where on one side of the screen they're just laid out per grid unit. There's sort of just an entire row of red inputs. And then on the right side of your column is just a bunch of blue outputs. And blocks fall down and you have to line them up to
Make a circuit.
make a circuit correct. So you can loop back reds on reds and you can connect them to blues. But it the way that it scored reminded me a lot of Klax. Why did I even remember Klax? I don't remember at all why it reminded me of that, other than it's a falling tile match game that I think it looked like a similar era. But I'd never played an arcade game that was like that used those two mechanics in tandem. I mean, maybe there are other games that work like that, but I played way too much of it. Basically, I built at least 2/3 of that sweet robot / Frankenstein that scientist was making, but it seemed when I was playing it, it seemed like a game you would like. And now I've, of course, forgotten the details of the mechanics, which is completely terrible.
I mean, I will say that it is one of the things I love. I mean, I was saying earlier, these going to arcade shows like this are usually full of new experiences for me, which I like. But one of the reasons I like it so much is because you can obviously any era of, any especially older eras of games, regardless of platform, there was a lot of crazy genre experimentation. Mm-hmm. But going to a crazy arcade show like this is pretty unique because these are machines that are still operational that you can still play. Mm-hmm. It's not like finding some old PC game or finding like an old console ROM or something that you just found amidst thousands on the internet. Like you have to kind of look for something specifically if you're going to find an old game. But when you go to an arcade, it's an unusual case of like a sort of semi-curated place where you go and there's just stuff there that just happens to be there because the guy who happened to own this machine. And, somebody
hauled it there and said, somebody should play this.
And something like Klax or SparkZ.
With a Z, not an X, my bad.
Yeah, or the game, or like Rampart. I mean, I guess Rampart's pretty well known, but like you're not necessarily just going to come across these just because. Right. Like the equivalent of those games on like a console system or on early PC stuff, like you're not just going to come across it, but you go to an arcade show and like, that just stuff happens to be there instead of some other game just because it is. And it's because it's from an earlier era, you get those crazy experimentations before the genres had all established themselves or, not that there couldn't be new genres in the future, but it seems like right now we're living in a pretty solidified, time for that stuff.
The obvious mechanic of SparkZ, which I'd completely forgotten, is that when you complete a pipe dream circuit from left to right, it disappears like a Tetris line. But that means you end up with these completely weird, irregular shapes that have multiple in and out points that then when they erase, all of the sort of dead blocks fall together. Yeah. So you can orchestrate weird tile and line matching chain events that end up getting way more complicated and fucked than usual because you're making all these sort of... It's not just horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, but you're creating these weird sort of winding snakes, either through a combination of chance because you have to play the tiles you get, or trying to line stuff up. And then the other thing that they introduced later on in play is a piece which you can drop to either clear one tile, or if you touch it to the end of a live circuit that isn't connected to anything yet, it'll wipe that entire circuit off the map. Anyway, it was surprisingly good.
That's cool.
It was, I would play it again.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all. Except for the crappy mad scientist stuff. It was really bad. God, it was really off-putting.
Is that why you think it didn't do? Because you opened that story saying, and the reason I think
I don't understand what you're not communicating.
The theme of that game, just like the aesthetics of it and stuff, were just really unappealing as an arcade game to me. Like I looked at it and went, ugh. Well, I guess I'm standing next to all these other canceled Atari games, so I'll play this weird, stupid thing. Oh man, wait a minute, I'm having a really good time. But maybe
what was so? I say you're not communicating why.
I can't explain why. It's just like the art was really bad.
But you think the game did not come out because it's strictly for aesthetic reasons?
I don't know if that's actually true, but like the mechanics of it don't seem that different than a lot of other games from that era.
That's why Jake Rodkin, CEO, would have.
That's why I would have said, "What is this? This is gross."
When you were Nolan Bushnell's worm tongue,
yeah.
Then cancel the game, Nolan.
But I don't know why SparkZ doesn't exist, or maybe it does, and it's mislabeled.
Yeah, California Extreme.
Sounds like a really. There is. You guys tweeted about some kid playing a Far Cry shooter cabinet.
Oh yeah, there are these kids playing the Far Cry Instincts Paradise Lost. That's the name of a game. Prototype arcade cabinet where one of those ones where you sit down on the thing and like you grab the big machine gun that's mounted.
That was actually how our California Extreme experience started, and it was a really off-putting way to start it because it was two kids who were probably like 10, or maybe a little younger than that, who were just sitting at this thing playing a Far Cry game, which is funny. But what it actually is just you see the guy in his like tropical unbuttoned shirt, like Far Cry 1 style dude, booking it across an island, and then he always, every 20 or 30 seconds, finds a sick turret that he jumps into, and then it's just really badly animated guys come running out from huts, and you shoot them, and they just run into the crosshairs, there's just blood coming out everywhere, and they were so stoked, and I was like, ugh. It's the video game that they put in a movie when they're showing a little kid playing a gross video game. Yeah. All those kids were just like, oh man, then I blew away 14 more guys. Oh, blow away those guys. Oh, shoot that guy. Shoot him. Shoot him. Shoot.
Yeah.
I'll get that. But there was that, and there was that game Grid, which looked like
Grid.
Grid was
the
that
racing game.
No, Grid, the arcade game that was the third person over the shoulder arena shooter. That the way that we were describing that was, this is the game that looks like someone described Quake 3 Arena to like a movie production designer who had no idea what a video game was.
Right. Yeah,
So it's just like these low poly 3D guys running around in arena.
It was like in a fucking X-Files episode or something where they go into a virtual reality game.
Yeah, where it
looked like
it
that.
shows your low poly character walk into like it tries to have the sort of Smash TV like, oh, this is like an arena sport thing, but they walk into a little cube room and then the walls go and turn into a green like hollow grid, and then that fades away to reveal like a techno battlefield where it is just third person guys running around that you control with a joystick. And there's a jump button and a shoot button, and all you do is like walk 3 feet and pick up the huge rocket launcher, then walk 4 or 5 more feet and pick up the huge laser gun and just shoot other guys who blow up in a huge pile of guts. And that's all that it is. Just like a minute and a half. Oh, and you have to type in your ID with like a touch-tone phone keypad. So it's like, doot, log in, type in your name, and that's how it remembers your grid stats. Oh man, gosh. It was just like, we're trying to save arcades, but this is not what a game actually is.
The internet's coming,
like
we need something.
It's like the 3D movies of the arcade world.
Yeah. People can log in with to the grid. Like, oof. Anyway.
NFL Blitz had a thing where you could bring,
there's some racing games like that too.
You could bring your N64.
What?
You could bring your N64 memory cartridge and plug it into
way.
the arcade cabinet and have all your stats and stuff.
That's actually rad. Like
that's cooler than these other things.
Yeah, I remember that. I could also be completely wrong, but I'm almost 100%.
So
because I played Blitz at home and in the arcade a lot. For some reason, there was a Blitz cabinet in Cody, Wyoming. I think somebody's parents thought it'd be a good idea to start an arcade. I think it lasted about 18 months. But
I think it's time for a break.
Yeah, let's take a break.
Video games.
For some reason, halfway through that podcast, I started thinking about how much I hated Batman again.
No.
Just the guy?
No, I love Batman the guy.
Fucking stopwatch, so I don't know how long that half was.
That's fine. I thought it was a good length.
Oh man, you hated Batman.
I like the movie.
I thought you liked
Dark Knight
Batman.
Rises.
Oh,
Look at this.
I didn't see that.
God, you can't see it, which sucks, because the picture that I took was like half a second after the cyber grid started fading away, but this fucking like 90s cyber dude was playing grid, so I could not take a picture.
Oh my god, and he's wearing that crazy deer shirt.
Hold on.
Can you take?
Hold on.
This is I got a better one. No, this is a photo of Steve from.
No, I've got a picture of this. I've got a picture of this guy and his 3 90s friends playing.
You shouldn't have spoiled it.
Oh, but you'll see. Yeah, well, they're playing Time Traveler, the Sega hologram game. Look at this. If the dream of the fucking
These
90s,
guys are the first 3 subscribers to Steve's Recall
Look at
blog.
that.
Oh my god!
And with the little like laserdisc hologram man.
I thought he was way younger. That guy.
No, he's been having that look for a little while.
Yeah.
That guy has.
But look at the girl over there.
No, I'm with it. I'm just going slow. Yeah.
I got everything.
Types of pain I don't like are like piercing pains, like being stabbed. I don't care for that.
Most people aren't into that.
Being
Like-
shot or killed.
Like a shot, like getting an actual shot, just grosses. Or like getting my blood drawn or something like that, grosses me out.
That stuff doesn't bother
Whereas
me.
like blunt force,
Doesn't really bother me.
like it's why I don't really freak out about riding my motorcycle. Whereas like if I fall off this thing, it's gonna hurt really bad at all.
What if you fall into a like blood donation truck?
I suppose that'll
You'd
be
have to fall into it in a really
specific
incredible
way.
way.
Land in the chair, right, and knock another guy out as the needle's about to go. No! I'm a different guy. It was a motorcycle accident.
The nurse just comes over, just finishes doing the thing, gives you a lollipop. Anyway,
Thanks. Oh, that wasn't so
yeah,
bad.
it was not so bad after all.
I don't know why
I die because my
As just an
spleen is
18-wheeler just
ruptured
slams
the whole time.
into
The thing you would swerve to avoid earlier.
That'd be impressive. If you overshot the truck that like T-boned you,
Yep.
you flew into a chair, got a blood donation all before.
Before that,
That's all just happening in like max pain.
like sliding like, down
yeah.
the street, and then just killed you.
People avoiding crazy accidents only to get run over by that car after having an accident happens all the time.
Yeah.
Especially with motorcycles.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Where you're just, I'm okay. Oh.
Yeah, it's like,
momentum exists.
I missed the wreck, but I hit this pole, and now I'm being run over by the car that I dodged. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, horrible.
Not to me, though.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Fuck, dude. Oh, God. I was watching a YouTube, actually from the forums, like this guy, like, linked
From the Idle Thumbs Motorcycle
the Idle Thumbs
Club.
Motorcycle Club forums linked a really great video from a series called Wright Apart, and it after the YouTube was up, it just sort of like said like, oh, here's 3 more videos, and one of them's like Guy Rex on Mulholland, and then I don't know, watch that, and then I watched that because I don't ever really see motorcycle wrecks, so it's always just interesting to me to see what idiots do or what happens. Maybe they're not idiots. This one was amazing. He comes barreling around a corner like in a full lean, going probably 3 times the speed limit. And there's a cop sitting there.
3 times the speed limit?
Yeah, the speed limit on the corner is probably 25, and he was probably going 75.
Jesus.
Just ripping around this corner, like in a full lean, like knee, like 6 inches off the ground. And he sees a cop who's just parked there that just reveals himself, and you see him just have the cop response. I'm like, oh, there's a cop, except he's going 75 at the apex of like a Laguna Seca style turn. Boom! Just completely wipes out, and the cop just sort of crawls forward. And, like, it's a really good
Flips
video.
on the siren.
Yeah. Whoop, 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 whoop. The guy's just laying there, like, covered in gravel.
Is that not the douchiest thing, by the way?
A little
When
whoop, 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 whoop,
Yeah.
whoop, whoop.
Yeah, that.
Oh.
Whoop. Like, okay.
Yeah, I know you're there. That's why I've been slowing down.
I saw the red light go on. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
All the problem is that just led me into a rabbit hole of motorcycle wrecks. So I'm in kind of a weird...
That's when you drove your bike into a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And then it
Short episode this week. Thanks, guys.
Video game.
There was actually a time when AOL 5 came out. I read this like factoid somewhere where when at AOL's peak, when the new AOL was coming out, they bought up the entire planet's CD production for a week. It was impossible to get a
God.
single CD made on the Earth for a week.
When was this?
Like 1995.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's an awesome story. I'll have to find it. But that actually reminds me is somebody at work loaned me this game Afterlife that I used to play a lot. It was a LucasArts, basically like God game. It was SimCity for Heaven and Hell.
Yeah, I remember it
written and
existing,
designed
but
by
I
Mike
never played
Stemley
it.
at LucasArts.
Yeah.
And it's the game I played a lot when I was like 11. And it was lent to me. And then, God, I wish I could find the tweet. I bet I can. But it said like on the send us an electronic mail message at like CompuServe95888 at like Lucas.
No, they're all CompuServe addresses were all just like
Just
16 numbers at CompuServe.
It was like an ICQ number, yeah.
6A. Like, what?
It was so weird when you saw companies actually use those as their contact.
Just write us at
information.
24486-4B8
Luckily, I don't.
at CompuServe.biz or to com probably. CompuServe.CompuServe.
Instruction manual. Contact us by internet email to 75300.454 at CompuServe.com or LucasArts3 at AOL.com.
Oh yes.
Oh man! So now's the time to add LucasArts 3 to all of your AIM buddy lists and see if someone is signing on to that account. I would like to redeem my Afterlife thing.
Every time I
LucasArts 3.
Is that tremendous?
that is incredible.
Yeah.
God. 2 Zach McCracken fans
somebody
swooped
beat
those.
George Lucas to the internet is amazing.
Someone beat him to AOL.
Yeah.
I like that though. Like, you know what? I love LucasArts games. I'm gonna set LucasArts as my screen name. Oh, someone else already has it. Oh, someone already has LucasArts 1. Oh, LucasArts 2 is fine. And then LucasArts themselves. Bitch.
Yeah. I remember when I set up, my friend and I in like 1998 set up a website I was really into Warhammer in the 90s. I think I've probably talked about that in the cast. I forget if I have or not, but I was into the
That's
Warhammer.
where the etymology of the word Lord comes from Warhammer.
It does, yes. Have we talked about the etymology of that ever?
No, but keep going. Tell your
We
story
should.
first.
But so it's just we set up just some stupid like store on the internet where we would like sell rare models that we would like obtain through like our local gaming store. It was really pointless and dumb, but like, yeah, but the thing,
thus creating the Remo Empire.
yeah, but the reason that I bring it up is because I remember we just had an email address that was like our website and our everything was hosted on our local ISP, and ours was CTSnet. And for some reason, I had this idea in my head that I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll have a customer service thing. So I just registered the email address customerservice@ctsnet.com. Or actually, I think it was ctsnet.net. Yeah. I think was the ISP. And I don't know why, but for some reason at the time that
was a really good idea.
Yeah, I was like, oh, because it's a customer service address, so I'll just get customer service at whatever. And then I also got it at yahoo.com.
Oh my god!
What? It was so weird. It's just funny to think about how impossible that would be now.
Do you still have the password for that account?
No, I tried to recover all that stuff. Well, the CTS one is like long gone.
Yeah,
I tried to track down that
customer service at yahoo.com
is
is amazing, though.
I tried to.
How did you think that was going to work out? That's amazing. It's like the guy who registered his plates, no plates. Did you hear about that story? I ended up getting 6,000 tickets.
What?
Yeah, this guy, he got custom plates. He said, it'd be funny if it said no plates. So every time somebody gets pulled over, and they're like, oh, this guy's got no plates. So ticket for that. Also speeding. So just like no tickets or no plates racked up, just 6,000 tickets in like 2 months.
I don't understand what the deal is.
What would compel him to do that? Or
No.
why
Why
he would do the
did he
tickets?
get so many tickets for it?
Okay, so the cop pulls a guy over who doesn't have any plates
in the
on.
grid for the license plate would write the word no plates for a car's plate with no plates, and that would get entered into a database. Is that real? That sounds like an urban
No, that's a
myth.
real
seems
thing.
like an urban legend,
No, I read that in like a newspaper recently.
Frank No Plates.
Frank No Plates. Because he had a quote from the guy where he's like, I don't know, I thought it'd be funny. Literally,
really good.
I don't know, comma, I thought it'd be funny.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh.
So we're back, I guess.
Video game.
I'm really happy that you have you had at one point customer service at yahoo.com, so I'm sure you just got a lot of garbage.
Yeah.
Were
Not as a troll, though.
Were you super,
That's the thing.
Right, were you super stoked though when you're like, oh, this person's writing in about a Warhammer figurine?
Yeah.
And not about how their Yahoo list service fucked.
Exactly, yeah. Yep.
What you should have started doing right then was just answering Yahoo tech support stuff, then ask for a job.
Also, I remember that's when I started designing websites, like occasionally for like, companies, like local companies and stuff, just like little things. And the first website I ever made was not only none of this was on purpose as an asshole, but like not only did I register the customer service account of the local ISP I use, I also just took their homepage and copied all of the HTML and like images and everything and just changed the words around. So I never actually thought about this until just now. But my website just looked like my ISP's website, but it had Warhammer shit on it, and my email address was just customer service at this ISP. I never actually thought like put those two things together before.
Remember that time when you were way younger and were just sort of incompetent and an asshole? Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to talk about Fez?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Fez.
Did you play Fez at all, Sean? Because I had an IGF build, but did you?
I watched you play the IGF build.
Okay.
The world turns around.
Yeah, spins around. It's the 2D, 3D.
Yeah, the guy's got the little hat on.
Fez.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually first played it on with the IGF build as well.
Sorry.
And I probably played it right at the same time you did, Jake. And it was interesting because when I played it first, I didn't really get into it. I played it for a couple hours.
That's all that I've played it so far. Surprise.
Yeah, and I'm sure most people listening know what the game is. It's sort of ostensibly a 2D platformer, except it's actually built out in 3D, and you can rotate the world around the vertical axis.
Yeah, like 90-degree flips.
Yeah, and it will always act as if it's a flat plane. So you can, I don't even know how to succinctly
a tree that
describe
would be
it,
in the background, technically, if you were looking in 3D space, since it's in pixel art drawn front on, becomes a tree you can jump onto.
Right.
And then you can rotate the camera around, and it turns out, it was 100 feet to the left,
Right.
so your guy whips over to that space when you rotate the camera.
Yeah, when a plane is just when you're just looking at the game in 2D, there is no perspective. And so everything is all at the same depth.
Yep.
And so it's a clever concept and it's cool, but like the actual reality of it, I found, is that it's actually just a fairly unremarkable platformer, like ultimately. And the thing that makes it more frustrating is that you have to collect just a bajillion.
My
of
experience
these
with Fez was a
cubes.
lot of like find a door, rotate the room 360 degrees to make sure there weren't any secret doors that I was missing, walk out of the door, rotate the room around, and until I'd found cubes.
Yeah.
But I didn't get far enough, I guess.
Yeah, well, and that's what most of the game is. And so you're playing. So that's why I stopped playing, with the IGF build after a couple hours, because I'm like, I just don't. Is this just the game? Just do this forever? You just do this for hours and hours and hours. You just find these cubes, and it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful game, and it sounds beautiful, and it looks gorgeous, and it's
it's got that retro PC post screen at the beginning.
Yeah, it's got a lot of all that really cool stuff. Yeah, it's got really great aesthetic touches throughout. It's it's really cool. But the game itself, I just found really tedious, and the platforming wasn't interesting enough to make the just nonstop collection interesting. So I'm going somewhere with this because actually my ultimate experience.
So you want to talk about Fez because you hate it?
No, my ultimate experience with the game was positive. I don't want to just only ever say negative things about the game, but I do want to preface it with this because that was an important part of my experience with this game. And so I stopped playing the IGF build and whatever. A few months pass, and my roommate at the time, we start just sort of on a whim playing it co-op on I say co-op, but it's not. It's a single player game.
Swapping the controller.
But right, we would just pass the controller back and forth. So she'd play a bit, and then I would give the adventure game style like, oh, remember when we were in that room like 15 minutes ago, and there was that thing on the wall. Listen to that. The way you play like a point and click adventure game with two people. It started feeling like that. So but still, we playing for most of it. It was just the platformer stuff. But then something happens in that game where you complete the game, or you get enough cubes that you can get to the end. I forget how it works exactly. And it turns out there's this whole other entire game within Fez. There's like 2 games in there, and one of them is a fairly generic platformer, but then also there's this crazy Myst-style thing that I'm sure everyone's talked about by now, but it took me totally by surprise, where there's just these embedded puzzles that are within the world that the game never explicitly calls out, that you just start solving because you start realizing things, and because you start to realize there are places you can't get to and things you can't do based on just what the game appears to be. So as we're playing this game more and more, we start like accruing pages of paper where we're writing things down and like, taking notes on things and like transcribing symbols and this and that. And there's an entire language in the game that is just, it's a simple cipher. It's just a character swap.
Right.
So like A looks
font,
like this.
basically.
Exactly. It's like a different font. There's a number system based on like positions of little, lines within squares, and like there's actual, it like makes sense as a like pictorial numerical counting system that you figure out in the game. There's all this stuff that is like, there's this whole other layer to this world that is just embedded puzzles within the environment. And it's totally it has almost nothing to do with what the sort of ostensible game of Fez is about.
Did you end up completing the puzzle portion of this as well?
So
how does that work?
Sort of. It's really tragic, actually. So we played this game for like more than a month. I mean, like, it took a long time, and because a lot of the puzzles are really hard. They're really obtuse things where it's just you'll just get stuck on them for a while because you just can't think of what to do, and then you'll have a breakthrough and you'll figure something out. In fact, we solved so many. We transcribed so many of these like etchings on walls that we actually got to the point where we could just read the language in the, like, it was crazy. It was an amazing feeling, actually, where we could just look at this like glyphs, on a stone face on the thing and just read it. It was crazy. I've never had that happen to me in a game before, where I could look at this fictional language and just comprehend it because we've translated it so many times. It's a crazy thing that this game.
Sean, you're like dumbstruck by this. This sounds rad though. Like, why I play Fez apparently.
And it was interesting, and I realized that there's no way this game could have been made had it not also just included this sort of standard.
It needed that because
platformer
otherwise
attached to
people
it.
would play for 20 minutes and go, what the F is this?
But
and then
what's
walk
also
away.
weird
Right.
is that 15 years ago, that's what Myst was.
Yeah.
It was just that. They just cut to that.
Right.
Except I think this is more interesting than Myst in a way, because the puzzles, it's not like Myst is like, here's this chessboard do or whatever. Here's this
Seventh
like
guest is the chessboard one. Myst is
Myst is like
remember
here's
these
the
animal
keyboard
sounds
with a rocket on it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's very obviously puzzles in front of your face. Whereas Fez is even more obscured, where they're just sort of in the world. Like there's just sort of like a headstone or whatever with stuff on it, and you just I guess maybe I'd do this to it. Like also, when you beat the game, you get a new way of interacting with the world. Like you actually get an additional way to
like a use button of some kind you didn't. have
you
before.
you get an ability to like look in 3D, which becomes necessary to solve a lot of this stuff. But this is really rambling. I'm not really. I wish I had a more central thesis, but like there was something really remarkable about just immersing ourselves into this world and just learning the world. Like not just like learning a mechanical system that we get better at through practice, but actually just learning how to comprehend what's going on in the puzzle system that is just embedded into the environment. It was really cool. The tragic thing about why we didn't finish the game finally, I mean, there's some cheap shit in there. Like there are a couple times we had to just straight up go onto an FAQ and figure out what to do, because I'm sure we eventually could have figured them out, and we did figure out most of the stuff ourselves, but there were a few moments we had to go online and look. But the thing that tripped us up was the final last like secret cube. It's like 64 cubes and this and that, and then there's like 3 even more secret cubes that aren't even listed, and one of them is in a room where there's a clock that goes around. And there's 4 faces to the clock, depending on which, face of the game you're looking at. You can rotate it around. And one of them seems to be on like a 2-day scale, so it hits midnight once every 2 days. And as far as I can tell, as far as we were able to figure out, it seems like it hit midnight around like 3 a.m.
But in real time.
In real time.
Oh my God. And
the cube that you get for solving it only appears for like 5 seconds right when it hits midnight. And for weeks, we would be up at like 2 a.m. and it'd be like, all right, we're just going to sit here until this goddamn thing comes up. But then we would turn it on. It would be in the totally wrong place. And we were like, oh, we must have miscalculated. And so we would, the next couple of days, we would load it up and we would try to like gauge how fast it's going and then predict when it would be back at midnight based on like, all right, between yesterday and today, it's moved like 6 hours. So if we just multiply that amount of time by 4, that'll be like 24 hours. And we were always wrong. I don't know, or it's like we were just completely incorrect about the method even. But for weeks and weeks, and our resolve weakened every time to the point where like we started checking it every day. Then we were checking it like once every few days. Then like once every week or two. We would bother, and then it's been like a month now, and we haven't.
So is this sort of this slow fade away?
Yeah, it really is.
That's really sad.
We've just kind of
that's actually the lesson of the final cube
from Fez.
That's
what
I don't know what the lesson's actually supposed to mean.
You can't go home again.
Yeah. Phil Fish is somewhere listening to this with his fingers like intertwined over his chest, and he's just finally.
Yeah,
just have 2 tears stream down his face.
And I don't know how I feel about it, because I mean there is a part of me that's very frustrated by that, because it feels like kind of a cheap puzzle to begin with. Like it's just kind of coincidence.
But it was you can't argue about its success.
No, exactly.
In
well, that's
producing
the other part
this
of it.
insane behavior.
Yeah, where I'm just like, well, I guess I don't know. It seems sort of fitting to this world, I suppose, that I just kind of fade out of it.
It would have been sadder if you didn't have the roommate.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have. There's just no way I would have played that long.
Right, but just you as a solitary individual, I checked every day and every 2 days, and I would stay up till 2 a.m. and wait and be like, tonight's the night.
Well, it's like 2 people makes it sound like it's the story of a sort of like bittersweet late 70s, early 80s young adult novel.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But like Fez is a weird mystical land that only the 2 of you can actually see. But then it sort of slowly...
like Bridge to Terabithia.
Yeah, like Bridge to Terabithia, exactly.
Yeah, and the
that clock just never was at midnight.
It only that one time and never again.
It's a metaphor.
But I did mean to talk about the sort of pseudo co-op experience more, because that really was the only reason that I bothered. I just wouldn't have stuck with it long enough to realize, which is kind of a shame, I guess, thinking about it. But it does feel to me like Phil Fish had just this like crazy idea for a thing, but then also I guess the way you get there is just make a platformer.
Yeah.
Like platformer kind of just feels like default gameplay in indie
Right.
games at this point, where it's like, what's the thing you do to express this like crazy aesthetic
Also,
vision
what
I
you
have?
can afford as a
I
single
guess it's a
person.
platformer.
As one.
Yeah, sure. But it also just does. It also it's like, oh, it's a puzzle platformer. Oh, it's an adventure platformer. Oh, it's
Right.
like, you know, I mean, it seems like sort of the blank canvas gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me a while before I kind of perceived the really fascinating stuff that was serving to, in my case, kind of just mask.
Right.
You know, like it was sort of getting in the way of me finding the more fascinating things. And playing it with someone helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because the most interesting part of the game is the obtuse part, not the easy part. Like the platforming stuff's not that hard.
Right.
But the interesting part is the stuff that requires this weird lateral thinking where you're just, it's like, oh, try this. Just try this weird thing. You know, and that's what adventure games are all about. It's like, oh, just try that crazy thing. Maybe that'll work. Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Ready for some reader mail?
Yeah.
Mail from you, the readers?
Oh, yeah. Questions@idlethumbs.net is how you send it to us.
And if you want to do some live reader mail, and you're going to be in Dallas on Saturday.
Yeah, we're going to QuakeCon. I will be there. Jake and I will be there, and Steve and Nick will all be on. Not Sean, because that
I will
guy's
not
lame.
be there,
But
'cause I am lame.
all the other Idle Thumbs will be there.
I'm really bummed.
What do you remember when our panel is?
Saturday.
I know, and it's early afternoon, but it's on. If you go to blog.idlethumbs.net or just idlethumbs.net, there's a post about the QuakeCon panel there. And also JP will be there with Brendan Chung, the guy who made 30 Flights of Love and Gravity Bone.
Yep, they'll be doing a panel on modding id Software games because, as you guys may have seen from that live stream, JP's done some Doom modding, including that Arcadia demake, and Brendan Chung obviously mods id games all the time because things like Gravity Bone and 30 Flights of Loving are built in the Quake 2 engine. So that panel should be pretty sweet. Yep.
And there's this right before ours. So
go to their panel,
go to
then
theirs,
run really
and
far
immediately
to the
ours.
other room that we're in, and then go to our panel.
Yep. They're in a huge like ballroom or something, and we're in some like little room, I think. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
Like an old
You can be
class
part of that little intimate thumbs crew. Don't say intimate thumbs, probably, actually.
That's a different site.
Yeah.
We're not affiliated
No.
with Intimate Thumbs.
Not directly, at least.
We have memberships to Intimate Thumbs.
You want to read a mail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from Johnny Driggs.
Hi.
Also, if you ever watch any of our... For some reason, you digest Idle Thumbs. Well, it'll be a long time before you hear this one then. Only in YouTube format. Johnny has been the one helping us out, putting those things on YouTube. So
Oh, yeah, we
thank
should
you.
actually just plug that for a half a second. Which, if you go to youtube.com/idlevideos, it is Johnny's been putting up all of our back episodes along with time-coded annotations, so you can actually jump subject to subject through the archive and stuff. It's actually really cool.
Yeah, it's a really nice resource.
Also, if your
looking
work for
something.
some reason blocks idlethumbs.net or iTunes, but doesn't block YouTube, which is a weird work filter, who's to say? You can visit us there. That would be really odd now that I said that. But then, you
never know.
no video games, but wacky animals and like movie trailers you can watch.
I said wacky animals, and I just wanted to talk about those little pygmy goats jumping
that's
all
cute.
over. Oh my god! All right, so Johnny asks, listening to your last cast and the story of Tsutomu Yamaguchi, the man who survived the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, got me thinking about what a game telling his story would be like. I realized that the game would be a surreal experience where the player is trying, or could be, he should say, where the player is trying to escape from those cities or warn others to flee, even though the character would have no logical basis for doing so. The player would direct the character to do all he could to avoid calamity, but if anyone in the game asked Yamaguchi what motivated his actions, he wouldn't have an answer. A game could take the easy way out and put in some kind of dream sequence of premonitions, but that would be dumb. Agreed. That's me editorializing. I wonder, though, if you or any of the listeners have any examples of dramatic irony being used in games. Since the player and protagonist are so conflated in games, I wonder how possible or advisable it is to give the player more knowledge than the player character. There's silly stuff like when the character exits a building in a cutscene and the camera pulls back to reveal the villain watching them, but I wonder if there are more meaningful or interesting uses of dramatic irony. You'd probably have to make a game like Republic, we should describe that, or that weird PS2 microphone game Lifeline where the player is playing as a character explicitly separate from the protagonist of the story. Anyway, I wanted to hear your thoughts. What's funny is... go ahead.
Okay, you can go.
Oh, I had the exact same thought like days later in the car thinking about that story of the guy who was in Hiroshima, survived the first bombing of Hiroshima in 45 or whenever the first atom bomb went off, and then went to Nagasaki and experienced the second one, which is pretty much the most horrific thing you could ever imagine. And how you could tell a story like that. Because we looked at that up against DEF CON. You heard the episode. But yeah, I thought about that a lot. I didn't really come up with anything.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like he's sort of presenting a few different kinds of things. He talks about dramatic irony, but I feel like that isn't quite what dramatic irony is, right? Like, it's dramatic irony is the audience being aware of something that the character isn't, or you know, certain characters being aware and other characters not being, and the audience being aware of that that contrast. But like, I don't think that makes sense in a game where the characters acting on information the player knows.
Right. I was just going to say that.
Yeah, that's kind of...
It would almost be like you would have to be manipulating the world to get Yamaguchi out of these places, knowing that the bomb's going to go off, but he doesn't.
He does, right.
Almost like the dog from Mr.
himself
Magoo.
Act on any of those things.
Yeah.
You'd be sort of breaking some weird...
Right, because then it's not really irony. You are just this dude who has insider information.
What is compelling me to move in this way?
Yeah.
Well, actually, what's interesting in the reverse of that, I forget the last things he said, but could you read me the end of the email, again? Because it reminded me actually of The Walking Dead.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I wonder how possible or advisable it is to give the player more knowledge than the playable character. That's probably what you were thinking.
What did he say before that?
Oh, really? I wonder, though, if any of your listeners have any examples. Since the player or protagonists are so conflated in games, I wonder how possible or advisable it is to give.
Yeah, well, just in general, I guess the whole second half of the thing, when he was just talking about, you know, player versus character and, like, them being conflated or not. I mean, it did remind me of The Walking Dead in the sense that my character, I feel like, knows a lot more about himself than I do. You know, so there's interesting... One of the things I forget if I may have already talked about this when we were talking about Walking Dead on a progress cast a while ago. I can't remember off or on the podcast, but there's definitely an interesting like conflict there, which I don't say is like a negative thing, but just like there's an interesting conflict where the character of Lee obviously knows whether he's a murderer or not, and so you as the player, you don't know that. But you have to answer questions on his behalf when people ask him about it. So you have to kind of make a decision about how you want him to be defined as a character, even though you don't actually know why. Like, the reason Lee says this thing that you make him say, he's saying it for a different reason, potentially, than you as the player are making him say. Mm-hmm. That was a terrible sentence. But I thought that was interesting when I was playing the game. And it's kind of the reverse of what Johnny Drake just is describing, I suppose.
For sure. I think, I mean, I don't know if Jake and I talked over the intent of that too much in The Walking Dead. And I don't need to make this too much about that. But, we wanted to give you enough emotional information to feel like you could answer those questions in a way that allowed you to pass judgment on Lee if you wanted to, I guess. Sort of your behavior as Lee is more of an indictment of somebody who's done something bad and how you feel about that in a survival situation, whether that is pertinent or not. And then obviously...
You don't know if he has, though, or not.
I mean, the game doesn't come out and say, I'm Lee Everett, murdered that guy in cold blood. But I do feel like there's enough early information with the way he behaves in that cop car for you to get a sense of the type of baggage you're probably carrying around.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't come off.
I think there's a place in episode 1 where you can straight up tell Clementine, "Yeah, I killed someone."
Right, but you can also not.
Yes.
Right. So, something that I think we're kind of exploring in the game is player choices, like dialogue that's put up on screen, is sort of valid world information, and that's always sort of that's always sort of the challenge.
I didn't interpret that way at all.
Can we tell a character's backstory by the things they could possibly say, as opposed to the things they always explicitly say?
Yeah.
Which is why when when other people write Lee, which doesn't really happen too much, but I do a lot of editing of the things that he says because he doesn't need to say that much because you should be learning from the things that he can say, which I thought was kind of a more interesting way to tell a backstory for a character.
But the general rule in The Walking Dead, which I think people are sometimes unclear on, which sucks, is...
I don't think it necessarily sucks. I find it interesting.
In the same way that you can't go back on content within the game itself, the past is super cemented in. So, by telling Clementine, I didn't kill someone, that isn't effectively rippling back through the timeline and affecting whether or not your Lee is guilty of a crime or not. if that makes sense.
Yeah, but then
There are people on the internet who say
right, but you could interpret what you just said similarly to say just because you told her you did do it doesn't mean you did. I mean,
Right. So I mean,
Yeah.
just from a straight up, like, if you want to walk the logic all the way back, well, then what that means is that all the information that's given, that all the information that's given to you to execute must be valid.
except that also means that Lee is simultaneously an asshole and not one, because you
If you
can
think
also
so.
say, yeah, but you're saying the things he could say are valid about him, like. Personality is part of a person too, not just factual actions.
Yeah, and I
So,
think
like,
that's a very calculated thing. Is this inside of the breadth and depth of what of this person? Can he be this big of an asshole? Like, I have to walk him back a lot, especially when other people write him. You know, and
yeah,
I think that's why the idea of good and bad, like the moment you start doing bad things in a game where good and bad is the choice mechanic, like. It kind of negates any of the good stuff you could ever do after that. You know, like if you like murder the guy, and we should actually talk about Spec Ops at one point, but
we totally forgot to talk about Spec Ops.
yeah, we will next week. But if you murder a guy in cold blood, like how much good stuff can you do? If you make the choice to do that in the video game, how much good stuff can you do to like negate that stuff?
Well, it's interesting in the context of what you're saying. The dialogue trees say about Lee's own past.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Lee's not supposed to be a quote unquote good character.
It's interesting
But
because I
ever
haven't
think
found
of him
him
that
to
way.
be the way that I've played him in the game. I have not found him to be an unsympathetic character. Like
No, but
I've
I don't
not
think
found
that's-
him to be. It's interesting because I feel like I could have played him in a way that would have made me find him much less sympathetic.
But I also think people go through phases in their life and have the possibility to be sympathetic or non-sympathetic based on the way
absolutely.
they act, not necessarily on the things that they've done. You know, so I mean, that's kind of it's more. I mean, very honestly, and I really don't like talking about our own stuff on Out of Bombs, but like The Walking Dead for me, very like selfishly, and it's something I have to be careful of in development, is an exploration of how far that level of character study can go when the character is your protagonist. And that's been an interesting academic challenge for me, and I don't know if it's always successful, I guess is the way. But how much of that, where is the line, and where can I start to intuit? I don't even know how to begin to communicate it based on the things I feel like I'm learning about the game, but how can I personally start to intuit this is the level of baggage people want to be carrying around? Maybe people don't want any baggage. Maybe people just want to be a blank slate. Maybe they just want, you're just, Gordon. Maybe that's what people want from a game where we play the protagonist, or they want just a cipher. But if we're going to say, okay, we're not doing that, we're going to make this about the character. We're going to make this about the player character. You're not, what are the sort of rules you have to live by in order to tell that story? So one of them we set up was like anything that is in a dialogue tree is validly canon, even if you don't say it.
It's
like it could have
something that was bouncing around in his head at the time.
Right. Like Heavy Rain did that, right? Where the things would float around in his head, like literally above his head. I thought that was actually kind of cool. I mean, it was a little over, it kind of gotten away from me, but that was just so it's a lot of this, whether it's successful or not is something I'm actively learning, I think. So
It definitely is interesting because we talk a lot on this podcast about what we imagine the intent of a creator to be versus what we perceive the game to be. So it's interesting actually just talking to you face to face, literally about the thing you intended that is not the way I interpreted it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've kind of given up, and I mean, like neo modern or like postmodern criticism kind of very actively divorces authorial intent from the reading of the text.
Yeah.
And I've kind of had to do that myself a little bit, where I'm digesting people's readings of the game. And they're obviously all just completely valid, but I stopped kind of thinking about, I've really like taken a lot of charge and a lot of power out of what I believe my intent to have been, and now just trying to continue to tell a good story based on the rules that we defined for ourselves early on.
Yeah. Well, nothing will shatter your perception of your own creative intent in a game than watching people play your game.
Yeah, but I mean,
Oh
at the
my
same
God.
time, like, there's a certain level of expectation that I really want people to take away from the game, but it's why I like a lot of the games that I like that aren't The Walking Dead, that are just go exist in this meta moral, like morals and ethics and what's right or wrong, what the designer wants you to do is not part of the game. Like, just go experience.
Well, I'm definitely increasingly of the opinion. I think it's probably become pretty clear over the last several years of Idle Thumbs, but I'm definitely increasingly of the opinion that the less heavy a game designer's narrative hand is, probably the better.
Yeah,
because games are just not set up to be robust.
Right. We keep saying this, but it's like that's the game that we're making is just complete narrative content. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? Then I need to take away the idea of what I want players' interpretation of the story to be, and just kind of tell a story on its face with a lot of implied. Yeah, let the player make a lot of implied value judgments.
That's interesting. Like that. I mean, it's interesting to hear your thought process behind that.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of I think especially when you're a staff designer, like there's a house style. So you say, okay, what are the things I want to accomplish from the design? Well, how do I want the game to feel? How do I make that happen inside of this style that is relatively rigid? Mm-hmm. If we want, there's no way we could make the systems driven like simulation game. It's just not going to happen at Telltale. Yeah, and not even have, I wouldn't, So the sort of games you can make, and then you try to do something for yourself inside that, I think. Mm-hmm. It's got way far away from dramatic irony. Thanks, Johnny. I would love to make a game like that, though. I don't actually think I want to make that exact game.
I think a lot of games are like that.
Which game?
I don't... What?
What are we talking about?
Oh, the dramatic irony thing.
Oh, right, right.
I don't know if dramatic irony is the right term, but sort of what he was describing where the player explicitly knows more than the character does. I feel like that's pretty common.
I generally hate that, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it most of the time.
I mean, that's something I harp on a lot. But
I think it could probably, if used consciously for deliberate purpose, it could probably be really interesting. But I feel like most of the time it's as a side effect of not having thought things through very well.
Well, I was just going to make that. It's so funny. There's that one line in Driver San Francisco that you said last week where he goes, with this new power I have,
this new thing I can do.
And meanwhile, that new thing he can do is pretty much just you pressing the buttons on the controller. Yeah. Like the character in the video game thinks it's something he can do. Meanwhile, Chris Remos sitting at home is making this thing on the screen do it.
The most intense and most probably suspicious example of this is in a sequel where it's the same character and you as the player know all the mechanics from the first game, but the character wakes up with amnesia.
Oh, like so every Metroid game, basically.
So it can tutorialize you the thing. But like Samus at that point is at least like, I know how to use all this stuff.
Oh, that's true.
But it's like,
that's true.
Like the second Phoenix Wright game, which is an adventure game, sure. But like he just goes, oh, I don't remember anything. And then it's like, but I have to go to court in 10 minutes? Like I just finished Phoenix Wright 1 within that same night. Like I was playing it in bed on my DS and put the second one in and was like, there's no way that you're just doing this to me right now. Okay, well, I just completed the most difficult case in the first game, and now Phoenix Wright has amnesia.
Yeah, Phoenix Wright just fucking put a capper on a career. Like, incredible Phoenix Wright, amazing trial lawyer, like whatever.
Trial of the century.
And then he's like, oh, I guess I have to present evidence. Like, oh my god.
Like tucking his shirt tails into his pants. Like,
mussing his hair.
I can remember what an objection is.
Getting by the skin of my teeth here in this, like, easiest court case of my entire life. Like, I guess I have to say objection. Oh my god. But, like, that's not an uncommon thing in a video game.
Portal 2 does that. Portal 2 says, good morning, look at a photograph.
Learn how to jump.
It's so charming, though, and so well executed that you kind of give it a pass. God. There's a joke in there that's really good, too. Yeah.
There's this joke in that video game.
A joke, that talking joke, the talking jumping, like, press spacebar to talk.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, that's jumping.
That's fantastic work.
Yeah, that was really good.
That was great.
Yeah.
Next email,
maybe? Yeah. Let's see.
We may actually only have time for one more of these before I go insane. Let's make it good.
We're doing
three. Yeah.
That's quality radio, you going insane.
It's old news, me going insane.
It's about once every
China or achievements?
Is this a test?
Achievements. Mike Clamaris asks, hey guys, in your last podcast was a 65, I think. You guys mentioned disliking achievements. Why is that? Personally, I'm indifferent towards them, except when they're in multiplayer games where they can influence how players act, and that can be frustrating. And as people that dislike them, how did you determine how they were awarded in Telltale's games on Steam, or why to have them at all? Does it hurt the sales of a game if it doesn't have achievements? We have to have them because there's just, if you're on Xbox or PlayStation,
you have to have an achievement.
And they're on Steam because they're on Xbox, so that's why that's their Telltale
Although you
game.
don't have to have them on Steam.
Right, but because we have them in the other platforms, we're we don't not put
Feature
them in.
parity,
Yeah.
And I mean, do we want to get into the details of how they're implemented and why in The Walking Dead? Is that worth talking about for half a second?
It takes 2 seconds. Basically, they're chapter markers.
Yeah, they're chapter markers, and they are that because we had to submit all of the achievements up front, which is why they are tied to linear story events. That, and we don't really want people, like, that game wasn't really about poking around trying to do a weird thing to get an achievement.
Especially in a game based upon choice. You don't want people making choices based on trying the achievements
Anyway,
you get.
yeah.
So, but why do I not like them in other games?
Well, I don't like them popping up in any game, personally.
Yeah.
But people who make hardware like achievements to pop up. Why don't you? Why I don't know.
Chris, I mean,
Oh, you
yeah,
said
what do
you
think about
said
them?
you said why don't I with you?
Oh, I meant why isn't, like, why don't we like achievements?
I mean, like, why some say that?
Why don't
Why some
I
say,
idle
why don't
thumbs?
I idle thumbs? I thumb.
Yeah, I mean, I don't always dislike them, but I don't like that they are an expected thing.
Right.
You know, I mean, I feel this way about a lot of things in games, right? Like, I don't. You know, this is a totally different example, and it's like it's so far removed as to be almost unrelated, except that it's just another thing that is accepted. Like, I don't. You know, I wish there were more games that weren't combat oriented in their design, right? Not because I think there's anything wrong with there being games that are about combat, but just like, you know, I wish it weren't so expected a thing that if you have a guy running around, he's going to be violent. And similarly, even though it's entirely different type of expectation, I don't mind achievements existing as a thing, but I don't like that they're just expected to be in every game now. You know, this like weird little, like, usually goofy pun is expected to just pop up constantly throughout your game and make you aware that you made a decision. Like, it's more interesting to me that you just make the decision, and it's the interesting thing is what the game makes of it, and like what the fallout is based on the system, or, like, you know, in a game like what you guys are making, based on where the narrative branches or whatever. Like, just the inherent thing in the game is what produces the interesting result.
Right.
And if that's interesting enough, you shouldn't need this like little thing to tell you that it's interesting.
It destroys me that, like, an incredibly, like, powerful, heart-wrenching, just horrible thing could happen in the game, and then it's like, boo-doo-doo-doo-doop.
Yep.
Oh, it just wrecks me. I really don't like that.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny is I hate to compare games to movies and things like this, but 3D is something where people are like, I don't think 3D is so bad. I think it's good, actually. I really like it. Like, it's really great. What if there was a movie theater that you could, like, what if AMC finally said, we're only showing 3D movies? That's it. Like, and would you have movies that clearly don't need 3D in them tonally, shoehorning 3D in so they can get distribution? Or would you basically just have a theater chain that didn't have a large swath of movies in them because
you have to buy
3D made that feel tonal?
Your TV suddenly just has to be 3D, and this has to be 3D because that's what it is in games. It's not like at this point, it's not like the place you play the game means it's not going to have achievements on it. Probably, like,
right.
As you guys say, if you're making a multi-platform game and you have it on one platform that has achievements, then you have achievements everywhere.
Well, it's just like, I mean, the thing popping up at the dramatic moment, and you can place those anywhere, but still, isn't that sort of limiting the tone?
Yeah, it absolutely
of
is.
the sort of thing you can tell. So we've just put an arbitrary ceiling based on the fact that we want this cute marker and gamer score and all these things. We've put this arbitrary ceiling on the sorts of on how much the tone of a game can achieve.
I mean, it just makes
drives me
games
nuts.
It just sort of makes games, even games that aren't supposed to be toy-like, it just makes games more like toys, where it's like sweet rocket attachment. Like, that's what it reminds me of, all this shit, where it's just, oh right, achievements included in this game tells you when you did
foil
a
sticker
sick
slapping
headshot.
against
Like,
it,
the time I think achievements are appropriate is in like competitive games, for example, where you're actually trying to explicitly achieve things. Like,
or if you're playing something like Trials.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Similarly, where it's purely
It's a game based on achieving things.
it's purely an exercise of skill.
Yeah.
You know, like you're achieving something in the way that like an athlete achieves something.
Oh, my
Like,
hands
that's-
went numb trying to get them in Geometry Wars 2. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely numb trying
Yeah.
to get them the hard ones.
And that seems totally appropriate. That's especially in the case of something like Geometry Wars, where that game is explicitly evoking the feeling of being this arcade where you're
Right.
just, you know, you're trying to make your quarter go as far as it possibly can.
Exactly.
Achievement's sort of in that spirit.
Well, that's also the achievements. It seems like came out of early. Were achievements on the original Xbox? Or were they just 360?
No, 360.
Because Xbox Live Arcade and the word arcade at the end of Xbox Live Arcade shaped so much of the 360
That's true.
experience.
Yeah,
which,
leaderboards.
which sucks because I think they were envisioning, like, this is to just go on a tangential hop for a second. I think people in big tech companies like Microsoft and Apple, especially a few years back, didn't quite understand what games actually were and just sort of have like a weird like dad opinion of what a game is, which is why
Still can be seen in
which is-
Apple's conception of what a game is.
Game Center on the iPhone is like, oh, games like darts and pool at a bar, right? Like that's what it is.
Oh,
or like
like-
shuffleboard.
Like when you bought Hoyle's 16-win-1 pack at
but
Staples
that's
in
the same with,
1996.
like, even with on the Xbox 360, which is the follow-up to the Xbox, like, oh, downloadable, maybe it's the like little arcade games. Like
Yeah.
maybe you could play Centipede and there's a high score list and like, but maybe we can do a new cool thing where if you kill 16 centipedes, it tells you that you did that.
Right.
But now it's like, well, I'm not.
Do you guys still have to put leaderboards in your games?
No, Microsoft dropped leaderboards as a required
'Cause for
thing
the
a couple
longest
years ago.
time,
Like
you had to
Wallace and
put-
Gromit's
yeah.
Grand Adventures on the Xbox Live Arcade, which is the Telltale game, has a leaderboard, but it's like dialogue lines heard.
Seriously.
That's like we had to have it because like it's an arcade game. You're playing an old British man. Yeah, who talks?
God, we were just blue in the face trying to come up with what that was going to be.
Yeah, I know we had talked when we were talking about Sam Max.
That's my favorite thing, though, is that you just made it the dumbest thing. Well, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you were doing your best, but like that's obviously just like
Eventually,
People started proposing really hilarious ones because they forgot what the game was. Where it's like, oh, maybe it's like playtime elapsed or hints heard or whatever. It's like those are just awarding you for being actively bad. So then we had talked about if there was another Sam and Max game that went on XBLA when that was required to deliberately theme it as the Sam and Max Wall of Shame. So it is like hints heard, number like average time stuck on puzzles or like long just
That would've
all
been
of these
amazing.
just like number like. Because the hint system in the Telltale games has all these timers and like that's one of the few things that is vaguely systemized in the Telltale games is the thing that tries to figure out what puzzle chain are you on,
Right.
how long have you spent in an environment, are you just going back and forth between scenes without actually actively progressing the story, but then using that to publicly shame people for how shit they were seemed
Right.
like a really good abuse of the leaderboard system. But
no,
we don't have to do that anymore. And like,
right.
yeah.
On the top of the Wallace and Gromit leaderboard, was it just like 1,000 people tied for first? Like
Yeah.
how did?
Well, I think that it actually
was a max.
accrued through multiple playthroughs.
Oh God! So it is
really?
totally abusable.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, that aspect, like that's the weird dissonance between achievements and every type of game that isn't Geometry Wars seems based on the fact that basically
A lack of foresight.
like Geometry Wars and that hex-based Tetris game or the hex-based tile game, like the like XBLA.
Hexic?
Yeah, sorry, Hexic.
Designed by Alexei Pajanov,
Yeah, but just like
designer of
XBLA
Tetris.
launch titles, the ones that were clearly in the pipe while they were developing all the
Yeah.
sort of
Oh,
meta
yeah.
features, clearly shaped this entire culture that is now just
Yeah.
blown up
It
everything.
is weird how that.
And
Yes.
like,
It's hard to imagine when Hexic was the shipping game on the Xbox 360 that like.
but
like,
it makes
they
so
were-
much sense to have achievements in those games.
Oh, of
Like, we're
course.
always
But
like,
they,
Geometry Wars,
they were
of
going
course
to look
achievements.
5 years into the future and be like, oh, you know what's going to be on here? Like that.
Braid or like
yeah,
The
Braid.
Walking Dead, like
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
It was just a different, So, I mean, I think achievements would be fine if we could actually not engage.
Yeah.
If we could say, hey, that doesn't fit for our game
Yeah.
platform holder, we're not doing them, and that would be fine. But
it's not. I mean, it's not always specifically for an arcade. Like something like Just Cause seems like it's fine for there to be achievements. in
right.
there.
I just wish there was a
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
That'd be fine.
I mean, and yeah, speaking of choices, my absolute least favorite usage of achievements is when you make a choice. Like when you make a choice in a game as a character and then you get an achievement. I hate that so much. It seems so obnoxious to me because that just seems so actively working against the, trying to create any kind of convincing reality.
Yeah.
Like that's just not how choices are like in any situation other than in games with achievements.
Right.
Like it's just
No,
kinda
what about like on a
and,
game
like,
show where you have to
choose your own
choose
adventure
between
books,
three
I
doors?
guess. Right. That's what it basically makes it.
One
though.
of those is a car, one of them is nothing, and one of them is an achievement pop-up. and you just always pick that door. That's your problem, Chris.
Oh yeah. Oh, I could be getting cars.
Yeah.
I could just be winning cars when I'm playing my video games.
Yeah.
Those video games.
My video games.
My video games.
When I'm playing my video games.
Think about that
All right.
free car next time an achievement pop-up comes up. Think about it and cry.
Think about how many free cars I haven't won.
Yeah. It's too bad. Anyway.
Well, thanks, Mike. Appreciate the question.
And I think we're done for now.
Catch us at QuakeCon.
What?
I'm not going to be there because my life has been absolutely crazy, and it's the only weekend I'm not going to be traveling for a month. So I'm really sorry I'm not going to
But
be
you
there,
can catch
guys.
Sean at PAX a month later when we do our live PAX show.
Yeah!
We'll just be Sean.
Just me. Hey, guys.
The Vanaman Hour.
The Vanacast.
Or that. It's one of those. Anyway, see you guys.
Cast
Bye.
of Vanaman. Go to the
5 episodes
Idle
on.
forums at forum.idleforums.idlethumbs.net.
idlethumbs.net/forums, or go to idlethumbs.net and click the button which says forums.
Or
at
go
the
to
top.
Google and type in forums, and then type in...
I did that today on
Google.
accident, and the first result is Internet Forum on Wikipedia.
Oh, but if you type idle forums, you'll probably find the Idle Thumbs forum and the one for that other creepy site we were talking about earlier.
Idle Sex Thumbs or whatever.
Wow, that's not what it was. That's not what it... That's a different site, which we are affiliated with. Anyway, goodbye.
Video games.
We got to see if .gobbler.net is open.
www.gobbler.net.
Yeah.
That's just gobbler.net. That's a different site.
Also, don't go there.
Yeah, www.gobbler.com. It's turkey enthusiasts.
Didn't we joke on the last one about Sean dying or something?
Oh,
No, it's when I almost killed that woman.
Oh, right.
You're going to kill that poor woman.
Woman. It's August 1st, 2012, and this episode was downloaded without your permission by the Uplay browser plugin.
This is Idle Thumbs 67, and I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I'm Sean Vanaman. Hi, guys.
Hey!
Hey! What are you pointing at me for?
I thought you were going to talk. You looked at me like I had something to say, and I didn't. It's August 1st, 2012, and this episode was downloaded without your permission from the thing with the shit.
Oh,
This is why we cut datelines, by the way.